Everyone will be muted, and if you're asked to speak, you unmute yourself, speak and mute yourself again when you are finished. If you have a question, press the symbol of a hand on the screen and the chair will ask you to speak, one person at a time. If you have a comment to make, you should only raise the symbol of a hand when the chair asks for comments. And again, the chair will ask you to speak, one person at a time. If for any reason a member has cause to leave the meeting, then they must indicate this to the chair before leaving. Please raise your hand or send a message to the online chat. If your screen freezes, but you have heard the whole debate, you may use your discretion over whether to vote. However, if you did not hear the whole debate, then you cannot vote. And as for the voting system, we will do the same as we've adopted at council. I'll ask when we come to the vote for abstention first, then for those who voted against, and then who want to vote for. Can I now ask all officers to turn off their cameras so that only elected members and lay members are on the screen? You should turn on your camera and microphone while you are speaking on an item, but please turn them back off again afterwards. So now could I ask Democratic Services to mute everyone and begin the recording. Thank you all. Can I welcome you to the Audit Committee, Monday, the 22nd of February 2021. And I'll read the note there about the recording. This recording may be broadcast on the authority's internet and it may be used for training purposes by the Democratic Services Department. All attendees will be in view of the camera, and by attending, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings being used as outlined above. Could I also ask if you have a mobile near you that you put that on silent as well, please. Now for the agenda, item 1, apologies for absence.
We're all present, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest, taking into account A and B. There are none. We then go to item 3. That's the Audit Wales presentation, certification of grants and returns 2019-20, and that's to receive a presentation from Audit Wales, pages 3 to 10. And Helen, I think you're taking this item, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Okay. So thanks all. So today I present a summary of our audit work for the certification of grant claims and returns for 2019-20. So if I just go through a summary with you. So we've completed our audit work to date and conclude that the authority generally has adequate arrangements in place, but there is scope for further improvement. So a key point to note for 1920 is that Welsh Government grant schemes such as Communities First, Concessionary Fair, 21st Century Schools, you may remember from previous years, well, they no longer require audit scrutiny. So this year we were required to certify just 3 claims, but these are hugely significant claims to the Council. So I'll come on to the preparation and audit deadlines in a minute, but the key message is that all 3 claims are certified without qualification this year. Okay. So if I just run through the impact of the current pandemic on our work. So the grant preparation deadlines were unchanged. We are aware of the additional workload on officers arising from the pandemic, for example, in the business grants department, as well as the pressures of working from home and family of life. So it's testament to the commitment of the officers who compiled the claims and underwent the audit in these times also. So the housing benefit, subsidy and teachers' pension claims were both prepared to the audit submission deadline, the NNDR return was submitted to us on the 3rd of July, so that was beyond the 29th of May deadline. The teacher's pension claim was certified by the auditor deadline. The housing benefit and NNDR return are both certified late, but without financial penalty for the council. Okay, so our audits were undertaken quite a lot differently this year. They were all undertaken remotely. All evidence was received electronically, and all officer liaison was done through Microsoft Teams and via email. The electronic certification of claims is also something new for us this year. Usually it's a manual paper process. So we'll be learning what we've undertaken during the pandemic this year to see whether there are any innovative practices that we might want to adopt going forward in future years. And we'll also engage with officers within this process and learn from their perspective also. Okay, so going on to our certification summary. So all 3 claims are unqualified. We did find errors within the housing benefits claim, which I'll summarise shortly, and these were reported to the DWP in our covering letter, along with the submission of an amended claim. The NNDR claim was unqualified and no amendments were made. A minor typographical error in compiling the claim was reported informally to the council. And the teacher's pension claim was unqualified with no amendments and no additional reporting on that one. So that was a clean audit. So just summarising our observations with the housing benefits audit. So there were some issues that we identified with regards to the war disablement pension rates that were applied during the year and the obtaining the relevant update letters for those. So as you can see, the errors that were identified were quite minor in value, but such as the reporting requirements of the housing benefit audit, these are required to be reported back, and a revised claim was submitted to the DWP. So the total impact on those errors was £320, so not a lot at all. So we just recommend that the council looks at their procedures for administrating the modified schemes in relation to the war pension figures. So with regards our certification fees, so our fees vary year on year with regards grant work, and they're dependent on many variables. For example, the level of risk of the audit claim during that year, the testing undertaken, the number of any issues arising, the promptness of queries being resolved with officers, and so forth. So I've just put a table together there comparing this year's claims with those undertaken last year. Of course, for last year, there were a few additional claims in there as well. So the total fee charged last year was £43,000 overall. So that was just a comparison with this year's. So that was just a quick run through really and summary of our audit work. I'm happy to take any questions on the report, any level of very much detail. I might have to come back to the audit committee, but I should be able to answer your queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Before we bring in Councillor Chaplin, can I welcome Councillor Amos back on the audit committee? Julian, good to see you again this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much indeed.
No problem. Councillor Chaplin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And you know, fair play. It was a good result on the grants claim, considering the pandemic and the way we work things. Obviously, what you started off with was saying generally it was an adequate arrangements, but you did mention there is scope for further improvement. Is there any specific area we should be targeting for improvement?
I think, as I mentioned with the housing benefit claim, although they were minor with the war disablement pensions and administration of the modified schemes, other matters found during all audits are very, very minor. So So yeah, there's always scope for further improvement, but there's not a
Yeah.
lot of wriggle room, to be fair.
Well, that's good news. Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, members?
That's it. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions from members? I've got one query, Helen, in regard to the certification summary. I think it's that. You mentioned about housing benefit, that there was a few queries there.
Mhm.
So there was some small adjustments. Have you any idea what percentage that is of the total amount? So we can give some idea to the audit committee. Is it very, very minor?
The housing benefit claim was for almost 17.5 million.
Right. So what we are talking about really is, am I right in saying the figures that you've found, which was a sample, would be minute compared to that overall cost?
Yeah, the errors we identified with regards modified schemes resulted in a change to the subsidy claimed of £320. Modified schemes are quite low in number. I think there was something like 17 overall. So with regards our testing and the extended testing, officers were required to do themselves. So we did actually cover all of that. So we're quite confident that that is the error within that. So it is a minor area of the entire claim in total.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? If not, any comments from members? I just want to re-echo the comments of Councillor Chaplin. We're all working differently during these difficult times. But clearly, apart from yourselves, Helen, as the Wales audit staff, who obviously have had to make adjustments how we work, there's been enormous changes with all the staff within the authority. And reading this report, they're clearly coping well. And I think I would say, speak for all the audit committee members, we're pleased to see that in these most difficult times that we're in. Okay, any other comments or anyone? Not. Can I thank Helen for the report? And I'm sure you're going to stay with us until the audit committee finishes, Helen.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the progress against the internal audit plan from the 1st of April 2020 to the 12th of February 2021, and has to receive the report of the head of the Regional Internal Audit Service, pages 11 to 16. Mark, you're going to take us through it?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of the report, you can see there in paragraph 1.1, is to provide members of the Audit Committee with a position statement on progress made against the audit work included and approved within the internal audit plan for 2021. Paragraph 3.1 then on page 11 sets out, in accordance with the public sector internal audit standards, the head of audit is responsible for developing a plan, risk-based audit plan, which takes into account the council's risk management framework, and also the responsibility for adjusting the plan to deal with risks and issues as they arise, and also to ensure that sufficient resources are allocated to deliver the plan as far as possible. In paragraph 3.2 there, top of the next page, the plan was submitted to the Audit Committee for consideration and approval on 12th of October last year, and the plan outlined the assignments to be carried out, which will provide sufficient coverage to provide an opinion at the year end, was having regard to the unprecedented impact of the pandemic, as has been mentioned already. Section 4 of the report just outlines basically progress that we've made against the plan for the period 1st of April to the 12th of February. The detail is shown in Appendix A, which gives the status of each planned review, the audit opinion, and the number of recommendations that we've made to improve the internal control environment. It should be noted that some reviews listed don't have an audit opinion, for example, the National Fraud Initiative, by the nature of what that is. Paragraph 4.2 then just sets out that Appendix A illustrates that 13 items of work have been completed, of which 12 audit reviews have resulted in an opinion being provided. A further 16 reviews are currently in progress, with another 6 having been allocated, which should be commencing shortly. And based on the assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of the areas examined through testing of the internal control environment, an audit opinion of good has been given to 3 reviews, an opinion of satisfactory given to 7, and an opinion of unsatisfactory given to 2 completed reviews that were issued this year, but were actually completed towards the end of the last financial year. Paragraph 4.4 then sets out that a total of 106 recommendations have been made to improve the internal control environment in the areas reviewed, and implementation of these recommendations will be monitored to ensure that improvements are being made. Again, as has been referred to already, it is recognised that some service areas are currently under intense pressure and have been since the start of the pandemic, and where possible, planned audit work is rearranged to accommodate any service requests. So we have, for example, deferred some audits, be in benefits, risk management, and some social services audits because departments were under significant pressure. So we've tried to work around those requests and recognising the pressures they were under. But overall, I feel we've made good progress in delivering the plan. There's still quite a few pieces of work to be finalised, and we have brought in some additional resource to ensure sufficient coverage, particularly looking at the risk management area and also social services, and work may go on into the early part of next financial year to ensure that we're able to give sufficient coverage to give an opinion. But in terms of the number of items that were deferred to later on in the year, that's no different to any of the other authorities that we're working in. Merthyr, I think, has coped very well in dealing with the pandemic. Obviously, there are capacity issues in all areas and across all authorities, but I think Merthyr has seemed to have been able to cope relatively well with the pressures and staff being diverted onto other tasks and duties and the significant pressures and workloads that they have faced. So as we stand, I'm pretty happy that we'll be provide sufficient coverage, and there aren't any major issues that I need to draw to the committee's attention at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Chaplin, a question?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Thank you, Chair. The first thing is, how do we decide what the priorities are? Who sets the priorities?
Okay. Do you want me to answer that one first, Councillor Chaplin?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, basically, we do a risk assessment on all different aspects of the authority to determine from an internal audit perspective what we see as the sort of most important areas. We consult with senior management as well in terms of areas that they might want us to cover. So we go through a process to do that. This year obviously was different because of what happened just before the start of this financial year. So we were very conscious in terms of focusing on areas of higher risk that were potentially affected by COVID and home working. We've talked about people working remotely, and I should say the same as Audit Wales. All the staff have been working remotely since the start of the pandemic, using Teams to conduct meetings and have been able to obtain information and so on, which has worked pretty well, to be honest. We haven't encountered too many difficulties, but ultimately the draft audit plan comes to audit committee for your consideration and approval. Ultimately, the head of audit has to decide what he or she thinks are the priorities, but we take into account a whole range of factors and take into account any requests either from members or from senior management in terms of what we include in the plan.
Thank you, Mark. If I take the item on the activity plan and it says Phosphorus contract and royalty payments,
yes.
Obviously I believe that that appears to be an issue, that we haven't been receiving money. And I did send it. I noticed last week the company, Merthyr South Wales, put up its 2019 accounts on the 18th of February. And obviously they posted 15.2 million. In the last 3 years of their published accounts, they made nearly 36 million. And obviously we're at risk where they've not been paying the contract and royalty payments.
Right.
And, you know, and I believe that obviously there is work that needs to be done to make sure that we're not at risk on that.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a number of issues behind the scenes in relation to this, and having been involved with it over many years, we put it in the plan just to really follow up to see what the current position was. So we weren't going to do an in-depth audit. It was very much just to understand what the latest position, because there'd been various legal issues and all sorts of things that had been going on over recent times. So Helen, in fact, is going to in Harbour, that is from the audit team, is going to follow up on that just to understand what the current position is with Force of Ran, and ensuring any royalties that authority is due, they will be collected subject to necessary legal processes.
Yeah, because there's a difference between can't pay and won't pay, isn't there? You know, you know, and that we need to make sure that we're protected.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
That's it, Clive. Thanks.
Okay, Bob Williams, please. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay.
Just a couple of small points. First of all, the matrix is very useful. I find it great just to scan down and see what's happening. But just a couple of small points if I can. First of all, I'm sure it's just a blip. Under major financial systems payroll, there are 8 recommendations. But on my copy of the report and the payroll, there are 11 on the table. I'm missing 3 somewhere. Is that just a typo, or perhaps is there something that's omitted on the table?
That's a good point, Bob. And as you were starting to mention payroll, I looked across and thought actually that they don't marry up, do they? So well spotted. Well, if there's 11 in the report, there should have been 11 in the table. So apologies, that's a slight mistake on our part.
Okay, just thought it might have been 1 or 2 that would need follow-up. The other one is a simple request, Chair. The table, again, I find so useful, but I think it would be even more useful if perhaps, without wishing to cause further work, another column could be added, and perhaps some dates put in, when they started, when they finished, and so on. That would, I think, complete the picture for me.
Okay. We can certainly look to do that. It was just putting something up that would sort of fit on a page and would be sort of at a glance useful. And once you start adding columns, obviously, then it trips over into pages. But certainly we can look at that. That's to see how that works. That's fine.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful, Mark, if you could do that for all members.
Fine.
Okay, go on, Bob.
It just shows the usefulness of it, Chair, to give an overall picture, I think.
Yeah.
And the other one was really to ask for a comment from Mark or his staff, because again, looking at the report, what shouts out at me is, under the list of recommendations, by my calculation, there are some 80 recommendations, all associated with a couple of schools or 3 schools. And that's a high proportion of the work that that Mark and his team are doing. 80 recommendations, some of them done, some of them still standing. But my comment was to ask Mark's opinion. Is it the fact that because schools are, their accounts are more complex, or do they find time problems, or do they need further assistance? Because if Mark's team has to keep following up all the time, it's tying up his time to move on to other reports. So just an opinion, really, Chair, and maybe it would be worth, if they are that complex, maybe it would be worthwhile trying to get some kind of pool assessments just for schools and take them out of Mark's domain to have somebody to help them with their accounts to make it that much simpler to move on. Yeah,
good question. I should point out Cyfarthfa High School was one of them. That the work was actually done in the last financial year, but the final report wasn't issued until this financial year, so that's why it's in this table. And I'm pretty sure that Goitra and Hale Gerrig were in a similar vein, because we actually did the audits at the tail end of last financial year, because we haven't actually been physically out to any schools this year because of the obvious situation. Cyfarthfa, I think, was quite different to the norm. We spent quite a lot of time at the school. There were lots of issues that had built up over time, so I wouldn't say it's representative of the general position. And we are actually doing a follow-up as we speak now, and based on what we've seen so far, majority of the recommendations have been implemented, and we will be coming back to the committee with the latest position before too long. We've got evidence to back up most of the comments around implementation, but there's a few things that we're struggling to get evidence for because of we're doing everything remotely. So yeah, I think with schools, this year is completely different to the norm because of the situation. But in terms of the number of recommendations, I think when we do a school audit, we are very thorough. We do look at a significant range of issues. So we go into a lot of depth that we perhaps don't give us broader coverage when we look at some other areas. And I can't remember, and I don't know if Helen's aware of when we might have looked at Cyfarthfa previously. It might have been quite some time, if I'm honest, and there was a change of senior management and a change of staff. So often when that happens, you do find that things that people are aware of and should still be done have actually stopped and fallen by the wayside. So I'm not sure if Helen wants to add anything to that, but I think it's something we got to look at in terms of see if there's a pattern that emerges over time.
I think as well with Cyfarthfa, they were one of the last schools to sign across onto our Aggresso system. So there was areas within that where they were still doing a lot of manual work and on the SIM system. So hopefully now they've moved on to our corporate system, that those sort of issues would have disappeared.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Bob?
Thank you. Yes, thanks.
Good. Any other questions from members? No, if not. Any comments from members? No. Could I ask you, Bob, if you can take your hand down, please, on the screen? That's it. Thank you. If there aren't any comments, can I take you back to the recommendation, which you find on page 11? And I'll read it. That members of the committee note the content of the report and the progress made against the 2020-21 internal audit annual risk-based plan. Could I ask for somebody to move that recommendation, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
I'll move the. Oh, I'll second it.
Yeah, to be fair, Councillor, your hand was up first. That's been moved, and there was somebody who seconded it.
Yes, I did, Chair, I think.
Right, thank you. So I'll take the vote, as I said, as we do normally in council. Any abstentions? Any members wish to vote against the recommendation? All members wish to vote for the recommendation? Vote now, please. From my screen, I think that's unanimous. Thank you all for that. If you can take your hands down, please, I'd be grateful. And thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Next item on the agenda is the item 6. That's the reflection and evaluation of the meeting. I think that both items we've asked pertinent questions, and we've had the answers. So I felt that we've dealt with that and did justice to the reports. Mark, you've got your hand up?
Well, yes, that's all it was, Chair. The item 5, the issue, I know that information reports, just
I
to
beg,
sort of
I beg
mention that.
I beg your pardon. It's I need another pair of glasses, I think. Yeah, it's the information audit reports. You hopefully all of you should have seen this, and I know that Democratic Services sent those out as well by email this morning, but you should be able to have access to them on the system, on the mod.gov system. So if anybody wants to take up any issues with any of those reports, we already discussed one earlier on. Are there any matters anybody wishes to raise? No, can't see any hands up. Okay, thank you for that. I've already dealt with item 6.
Do you mind if I butt in for 2 seconds about the internal audit reports? Any member that's having problems accessing the private modern.gov app, could you please contact either myself or someone in Democratic Services, because we need to send you a registration which has been sent to your laptops, but if you don't activate it within 24 hours, it won't work. So if you need to access them, which you really should, because they shouldn't be sent to you, we can sort that out for you.
Yes, and I must confess, I was one of those members. As you know, Karen, we had conversations on Friday, yes, and that's been resolved. And as far as I'm concerned, it's on the mod.gov system. Yes. Once that's done, if members haven't done it, they'll deal with it in Democratic Services, and it's much easier then to access and read it in the mod.gov system. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Bob?
Yeah, just one point, Chair. I was one of the ones, and I'm probably the odd one that's having most difficulty with it, but Democratic Services and Mark's staff have been very helpful. As long as I can continue to have them emailed to me, then I can manage to print out what I want to. One of the things with mod.gov is when we're on a screen like this and you need to have a paper alongside you, as I'm sure other members will find the difficulty, I find it useful that maybe I'll just print out the relevant page as a reminder. But on my system, and I don't know if it's the same for other members, mod.gov doesn't allow you to print out. It's got this security issue associated with it. And I wondered if other members are having the same problem.
Well, Karen, do you want to, first of all, be able to answer that query if you can?
Well, I'm not aware of any problems, Chair. I'm not.
From printing it from the mod.gov system, which is what Bob is saying.
Oh, right. No, it can't be printed from the modern.gov, no, because it is purely an app for viewing. We would need to have them sent to you separately then.
Yeah.
But, you know, no councillor has come to me asking for that as yet, so I'm not sure. It is purely to view with the app. We won't be able to print anything from there. It's not designed for that.
Right.
But I do appreciate Bob's problems that, you know, trying to view them as in with the meeting. I can understand.
Yeah, Bob?
Chair, I'm just making the point that to use the system, as I think perhaps most members do, to have something alongside you in hard copy to be able to relate it whilst you're still using the screen. The only way I can do that is to have it emailed. Now that's fine as long as I can get them emailed to me. And I don't think that's a particular problem. I'm just making the issue in case other members are having the same problem.
Yeah. Any members having any issues in that respect? No one seems to be indicated.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not trying to print off, so you can view it. But yeah, no issues in that respect.
Yeah. Well, perhaps could you email them out to Bob, Karen?
Yeah, I'm sure. I know I spoke to Helen this morning about this, and you know, if he is having difficulties, we will accommodate. I'll speak to Helen separately and we'll sort something out.
We've just got to be careful with this sort of security across the emails, because it'll be on a different sort of network or server. Sorry, I'm not very IT savvy. But because Mr. Williams is sort of external to the organisation, the network wouldn't be as secure. So we would just need to sort of seek advice from IT regarding emailing.
Right. I mean,
we
I
can
need to make,
and we could maybe go down that route.
Yeah, I mean, I need to make the point that Bob Williams is a full member of the audit committee, is the same as the elected members, and we need to make sure that he has access to everything in the same way, perhaps as elected members. So I leave that with you to contact Bob. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Bob? Oh, is that okay, Bob?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't want to be awkward. It's just getting the whole picture. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'm on to item 7 now. Any other business deemed urgent by the Chair? I have none. Can I thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and we'll see you all at the next audit committee in April. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.